So, Sarah, tell us your favorite story about city lights in 90 seconds.
Well, there's a ton of them, but I think the one that has always been the most life-changing for me was kind of over a couple week period when we first started Nightlight, which is our program under the bridge. And we had a foot washing station where we washed people's feet and put new socks on. And I had been picked to run that station. And so I was running that station. Nobody was coming up because, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing.
Yep. Yep.
And so I was asking around, asked a guy or asked a lot of people, nobody wanted their feet washed. And so I had come up on this table, and these guys were probably in their 20s, and just said, "Does anybody want your feet washed?" And a guy was like, "I guess." And then I panicked because I was like, "Oh my gosh, now I have to do this." So he came over and I washed his feet. And as I was washing his feet, he was just telling me about his life. His name was Hurricane. He had lost everything in Katrina and moved here from New Orleans. And I finished up and looked up at him and kind of tapped him on the leg. And I made eye contact and said, "Thank you for spending your time with me." And he diverted his eyes and told me that I was making him feel uncomfortable, that he didn't like eye contact, which left me in a really, I didn't know what to do, just kind of thought like, I think I know what I'm doing, but I really don't know what I'm doing, and just felt really torn over that moment. And I said, "I'm so sorry." And he went on his way. And the next week I was still in charge of that station. And so I set up and really had just toiled over that all week, and that interaction, and questioned what I was even doing out there. And I think at the beginning of the night, most people need food before they need their feet washed. And so usually kind of stand back and let people eat. But I saw him come from the corner of the bridge, and he walked right over to me, and he looked me right in the eye and said, "Sit down, now it's your turn."
Mm.
And he washed my feet. And there's just so many things that I learned from those moments and from him and from that relationship. And I think, like, when I think of like one of my favorite stories, there's so many of them. There's just so many over the past 11 years. But that one for me is kind of a North Star, right? Like it's like something that I can always go back to and say, like, this was a powerful moment in my life that I'm so grateful for, and that I can go back to and recenter on this work and on people and on relationships. And so that was probably.
It's a beautiful day out here in Midtown Tulsa, but last week was not so much. Thankfully, Sarah and our friends at City Lights opened up a pop-up shelter to help 300 of our friends stay inside, stay warm, and have warm meals and build those relationships. That's really what City Lights is all about. It's about building the relationships and providing housing for people who are in need. And so you're going to hear a lot more of the City Lights story here in this conversation with Sarah. You're going to hear how it all began, what they do under the bridge. You're going to hear about the City Lights Village and just some of the work that she's done over the years to help out so many people in our community, and what City Lights is going to try to do in the future. And so you will love this conversation with Sarah Grounds of City Lights. So with City Lights and with Night Lights, tell us, I mean, part of the whole thing that dignity is a big thing, right? And so there's dignity in receiving and in giving, which I think is part of that magic that probably happened right there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so important. And we say this a lot of times, even at orientation, like if you're working a station and you're not willing to let somebody provide you with that, like if you're gonna work at foot washing, if somebody asks to wash your feet, like, will you step out of that role and allow them to? Or if you're gonna pray for somebody, are you willing to let them pray over you? There's not this line in the sand that says, like, I'm here to be the savior, or I'm here to do this for you, but don't have any needs, and I think that that's a hard part, especially for givers, to be able to kind of let that wall down, because we can use that as a defense. And so I think that it's just so important, and dignity is a piece of that, and belonging is a piece of it. just so much.
Yeah. So take us just practically. So the City Lights, I mean, probably the biggest, I guess, thing you're most known for is Thursday nights under the bridge, night lights. Tell people about just kind of what that's about.
Yeah. So yeah, Nightlight is our biggest program that we have. It is every Thursday night, year round. So we're out in the heat and we're out in the cold. So I always say, if you didn't get to volunteer where you wanted to volunteer, come out in January. So there's lots of spots open. But yeah, so we serve a warm meal every week, but we also do a lot of other things, provide clothing, essential items. We do haircuts, we paint fingernails, we wash feet, we do all those in the warmer months. We have a kids zone, book station, just really anything that you could need.
Yeah.
But also we have a hosting station, which is really, I say, the heart of the bridge, where people are welcomed in, like if somebody had walked into our living room. And just really that connection piece. And so it serves as a resource. We have a resource table out there. We have partner agencies like Grand Mental Health and Family and Children's. They come out and serve alongside us. So we have a lot of those resources for what people need. But I think also a huge part of Nightlight that was totally unplanned for is the mobilization of volunteers. And so really allowing people an opportunity to get to know their neighbor.
Yeah.
That maybe they've only seen at a street corner or walking into Quick Trip. And I think that that's a really important piece, is that mobilization and proximity to people. And so that's another really great thing that Nightlight does. But that's our largest program that we operate.
And so I know it probably varies time of year and other stuff about how many ish what's a normal night of volunteers? What's a normal night of your friends? I mean, what you've all talked about are friends, of your friends, like how many, what's a normal?
Yeah. So of course, at the end of the month when resources have kind of ran out, so if somebody's getting SNAP benefits or something like that, and that's gone, our numbers are a little bit higher.
Yeah.
On our guest. But we serve around 300 to 350 people every week. And we usually mobilize anywhere from 50 volunteers in January to 100 volunteers in November. I mean, so it really kind of flexes, but usually we have anywhere from 50 to 100 volunteers that are out working with us. And that's churches, businesses, families, solo people that are out there by themselves. Really just leaning into relationships.
And then typically on a Thursday night, an organization, a church, a group will sponsor, is kind of the primary sponsor.
Yeah.
And then obviously other people can kind of help, but though that builds some volunteers that might come out as well as some financial support. And then, like you said, just depending on what it is there, so of different groups that volunteer, I'm just kind of curious, what would surprise me about the volunteers you get?
Goodness, that's a hard question. I don't know. I think the diversity of them, and I think one of the things that we see people that come in that have never had any interaction with anybody that's experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
And then on the other end of that, in that same group, because it's not really talked about, you might have somebody else that has fully experienced homelessness or grew up in severe poverty as a child. And so you have like these two ends of the same group that are out, and that really opens up a dialogue of who is homeless and how does that happen. So I think those are some of my favorite times, as well as when people come in and they're a little bit fearful.
Okay.
And by the end of the night, they're sitting with somebody and have had this incredible conversation, and they're coming back. And we get to be the recipients of hearing how that impacted them. And so I think that that's a really fun piece of what we get to do that's really cool, as well as the volunteers or the guests telling us. Like, I had a guest a few weeks ago. We had a group from Oklahoma City, or from Edmond. They would make me clarify. From Edmond, that came out from a church. It was a youth group. And one of our guests had met some of the youth, and they were just telling me like how encouraged they were that the youth would take time to sit with him and talk and ask him questions about his life, And so I think it's just, I think kids always get it before we do. They just have a different lens. And so, I don't know, it's just really fun to get to hear those stories.
Yeah. Well, and I think about, because we both have like kids, middle school, high school,
Right.
You're a little bit college age. But yeah, they're just around they could be around more diverse things. They're meeting new people. Their world changes up on semesters, and they're just like, these are just people, and we do put these walls up of like, oh, what's going on there, and kids just get it better. I think just that willingness to support. Why wouldn't I help out, or why wouldn't I sit down and do that? So
they're just really incredible. I think our kids have a lot more diverse experiences than what I had as a kid, and I love all the experiences I had, but I just didn't see things the way that I see them here now in Tulsa, and I hope that I've helped open some of those doors for my kids. But they really, all three of mine, just blow me away with how they see and accept and love people. So it's really good.
Yeah. So Nightlights has been going on for 11 years. Almost every Thursday. Thanksgiving off now.
Take Thanksgiving off now. I used to do it, but a lot of our partner agencies do a lot of great work, and we give that time back to our staff and our volunteer staff.
So when you so there's a rotating group of volunteers, right? Churches, agencies, all that kind of stuff. But you have a core group of staff and volunteers. Tell me a little bit about kind of like, because I mean, when our church went out there, that was my first time back in June or July. We like the hot ones apparently, but it was there are people who are like, there are people like me, like, oh, first time, y'all did a great job orienting us. But then there was people like, oh, you know exactly what to do.
Yeah, they do.
You have it down to an art and a science. Yeah.
So we have 7 paid staff members that run all of our programs, because we have other programs outside of Nightlight. And then we have around 30 volunteer staff members. So these people are rock solid, amazing, incredible people, all with their own story, all with their own why. And some of them have been with us since like a few weeks in, all the way up until, the last year probably.
Okay.
And so we do an onboarding twice a year. So we'll bring new volunteers into that volunteer staff. But the volunteer staff members, they go, we identify them. Actually, our volunteer staff members usually volunteer new volunteer staff members. So they, they're identified as people that are coming out, that are really getting it, that are connecting with people, that are stepping up and stepping in and just show a desire to want to be even further involved. Those volunteer staff members, the majority of them are also monthly donors. So they're not only giving of their time, they're giving of their financial resources and all of that other capital that they have. They're really, truly bought into what we're doing in the mission. And so we do a training and onboarding. They get a lot of extra training on like suicide, like QPR, suicide prevention training, de-escalation, just homelessness in general, what's going on in our city, those type of things, and like resources. So if a guest comes to them needing resources, they can identify those or point them in the right direction. So they have a little bit of further training, and then we teach them on all of the stations and how to run them out there. And honestly, they are there they run it. Like there are things that they're like, hey, what goes on the truck next? And I'm like, no idea. Haven't done it in 11 years. Never did that. Never my job. But really, they're the ones who empower other volunteers and get them set up and get them going. And so I cannot say enough good things about our volunteer staff. When we started this, I never in my wildest dreams that we would have a core group of folks that were so lovely and such great humans. And truly, it is a family inside a family. Like, they're just amazing and there for each other. We have fun things like odd night out. So every odd month we go do something fun. So we may, as a team, go like throw axes, or we switched it up. We're going to do December. So we're going to go out to Raymond, look at Christmas lights this weekend. But they're really amazing.
So I'm going to ask you an impossible question. All right. So just name one volunteer and like their why. So just kind of just to help us understand, like, who are the people that are out there that are giving up their Thursday nights regularly? So one, maybe two, if you,
So I think, and Kenna wouldn't mind me sharing this because she shared it with groups if you've ever been in her group, and also if she shared it on some of our videos and things. But so Kenna and Steve, they have been with us since our very first November. We started in September. They started in November. And they had come out as a family on Thanksgiving to serve when we were doing Thanksgivings, because she had lost her brother on the streets to mental health and things and stuff. And so she had walked that, and it was their first Thanksgiving without him, and they chose as a family to come out and serve. And she, shares that she wasn't able to do those things for her own brother, but hopefully she can do it for somebody else's brother, and be that person for them. And so they have been solid volunteer staff this whole time. Steve served on our board for a little while, but they are incredible people who just love them to pieces, and the ways that they support and what they give. When Steve or Kenna lead an orientation, as any other volunteer staff member, as they lead their orientation, they're giving a piece of themselves, and it will connect differently than what somebody might connect with me.
Okay. Yeah.
And even when, Steve or Kenna or any of our other volunteer staff are sitting down with a volunteer, their unique self connects differently. And so, it's so great that we have such a diverse group of people.
Yeah.
We have people that have experienced homelessness. We have people that have not experienced homelessness. We have people who are very corporate versus very not corporate. It's just so diverse that it allows a wide variety of connection. Coverage. So I love it. All of our churches, some not church, it's just a wide variety of people.
That's so cool. And I just think, what a different perspective. Yeah, having a brother. So then everybody there is a potential brother, right?
Right.
It is, I can't do this. Reminds me of, there was a couple that was at a church I served at, who their grandkids lived in Tennessee. And they volunteered for the children's ministry at the church by faith that there would be somebody who at their kids' church or grandkids' church would volunteer by there, because that's what they would want, right? And if you had a loved one who was homeless, who was experiencing, you'd want somebody to be there, right? So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really amazing. We get to be a part of so many different people's lives, and we get to have them be a part of ours. And it's just been a real gift that was never expected, when we started this. So,
yeah. All right, I have lots of questions. Let me see which one
do you want to talk about other programs?
Let's talk about other programs. Yes.
But I don't want to skip out, because we do a lot of good stuff outside of Nightlight. Yes. So Nightlight was that was our start, right? We were not a nonprofit. We were a group of friends that went to church together that started that. And then as we grew, about 2 years in, we became a nonprofit. So our nonprofit is the City Lights Foundation of Oklahoma.
And City Light stands for you.
Yeah.
Just tell us what it stands for.
Yeah. So lights is kind of our theme. And so if you take the first letter of all of those words, it spells out loving individuals, giving hope, and touching souls.
Okay.
And so our mission is loving individuals, giving hope, and touching souls through meaningful relationships and dignified housing.
Okay.
And so that's what we do. That's our mission. And so as we grew and became a nonprofit, Nightlight's one of the programs under that. And then COVID happened as we were working on some other things, and we kind of had to shift. We ended up running a hotel at 31st and Memorial. Most people did not know about it. It was for people that were experiencing homelessness that were either positive for COVID and needed a safe place to isolate.
Yeah.
Or the other half of the hotel was for medically vulnerable.
Okay.
And so out of that, we ended up housing 130 people into housing, and really recognized very quickly that people don't just need a roof over their head. They need a relationship. They need community. And so built out an on-the-spot housing stability program. So our housing stability program is incredible. And I think so many people throw around the term housing stability, and it looks like, a case management visit once a month, or, something just quick, a call. But our housing stability team is incredible, and they do everything from sending birthday cards to checking in, going to doctor's appointments. They've walked end of life with our friends. Just the whole gamut of everything. And so they really are, it's a very intentional, relational piece of what we do to help keep people stable in housing, and to really identify anything that might put them at risk for losing their housing or going back to the street or not being successful in their housing.
Okay.
And so I can think of the other day, we had a guy that stopped in the office just randomly, and they had a birthday cupcake for another one of our neighbors we were going to go visit later that day. And he walked in and they were like, it's his birthday. And they just knew. I mean, like they just,
Oh, yeah.
you just knew, we have 100+ people that we're taking care of, but they remembered him. And so he walked in and they're like, oh my gosh, happy birthday, and they're like, hold on. And they ran back and got that cupcake. They went and bought another one for a neighbor. But like, and came back with a candle on it. We lit it. We sang to him. He blew out his candle. And he was so blown away that somebody remembered his birthday. Like, couldn't even think of the last time that he had celebrated. Like, yeah. And so, I mean, that's just like the essence of them. They are so very intentional with the housing stability program.
So how does one, I mean, because, oh gosh, I mean, just housing is such a big thing, right? So as we think about the housing stability, are those people that you find at Nightlights? Are those that you all have kind of walked with, or what gets somebody into the housing stability program? How long do you walk with them? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So, for right now, it's everybody that we've housed. So anybody that we house through the hotel, like when we move them out of that temporary place into their permanent housing, and we stay with them.
Okay.
And we also take on a few extra case managements. We're kind of in a place of like capacity. And so really recognizing what is our capacity to do this and do it well. And so we won't take on any more until we hire another housing stability coordinator. But we want to be really intentional and not provide a lesser service because we've hacked ourselves out too much. And so we're really thoughtful about that. But yeah, so we stay with them forever. Unless they just are like, I don't want you anymore. And then we might still be like, but we're still here if you want us. It's because we know like people are built for relationship. They're built for community. And that doesn't stop. And a lot of our friends, be it trauma or something that they've done, whatever, they've lost that safety net.
Yeah.
And so we are rebuilding that safety net back, and we're using our team, we're using other partner agencies, and we're using volunteers so that they have an even deeper safety net and an even wider one to catch them so that they're not back on the street.
Yeah. Yeah. So somebody who was on the street and got them into housing.
Yeah.
And then so we're just going to keep walking. And then, and I mean, life, one of the things is just like life is scary, right? Like just all of a sudden it's like, wow, the car breaks down, a medical event, rent prices, I mean, I was talking with Jeff James and, rental prices went up 12% over a given year.
Right.
So, I mean, just all these things
so many things
that are outside of our control, can happen. And so, yeah, having that, like if something happened to me, I'd be like, well, I know my parents would help out, my wife's parents. I mean, like we would have a net. We have that net.
Right.
And a lot of people don't have that net.
Yeah.
And so you guys are, this net. So that's another
program.
The housing stability. All right. What else do we have?
We do outreach. So cold weather outreach.
Okay.
Weather's changing and stuff. So we do a lot of different things. Last year we helped hold up a pop-up shelter downtown that held and took care of 200 people during the last winter storm. So we're always jumping in there, just doing regular cold weather outreach. We usually go at night. We don't typically do our outreach during the day just because we know a nighttime outreach is more of a life-saving efforts, and also just to check in to make sure they're doing okay and have what they need if they won't go to a shelter or can't go to a shelter. We know right now there are about 500 to 600 people unsheltered throughout Tulsa, and that's when our shelters are at capacity. So we don't have enough shelter space in Tulsa. So we do that. And then we're also about to open up the residential care centers. So we were selected for that. So that is going to be it'll kind of work like the hotel worked that we ran during COVID. It's a temporary shelter. We have staff there 24/7. And we're really working to identify people that are not able to be in a normal shelter for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Whether it's medical or whether it's mental or they've been banned or whatever.
Yeah.
And then working to house them in 120 days, which is going to be hard, just with our housing stock right now. But that's our goal. So they'll come in, they'll be a part of that program. They don't have to like leave in the morning and come back at night. Like that is their room. It's very dignified. The rooms are being built out right now.
Okay.
Beautiful apartment style type rooms, really helping them begin to settle before we put them in an apartment, right? Like we're starting that process earlier so that we can get through some of those harder things so that when they're in their apartment, then we're just coming alongside it with our housing stability.
So let me ask this. So you worked through some of those harder things.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who's been experiencing homelessness, what are, I mean, and some of the, you mentioned trauma, you mentioned mental health. I mean,
Right.
like health things. I mean, it just all, I mean, so I don't know, take me through a typical, and there's no typical, I guess,
Right.
elderly, like, like, but what are some of those things that you just have to work through initially kind of during those first 90 days that it's like, oh, I'm just thinking, oh gosh, like, man, I've been betrayed. So I feel betrayed because this agency said they would help me and they didn't end up helping me. And why are you going to be any different? And then at some point in time, I go from like, I'm not angry. How do I learn to trust again? So anyways, that's a convoluted question, but I think you get it, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so many different things that people come in with, right? And so while we're working to get those things that they need, like IDs or, their social security stuff or whatever that is, we're also adjusting to life inside. We've had friends that have been outside, sleeping outside in their wheelchair for 15 years, and a lot of that trust is a piece of that. And people will test because it's easier for them to test and you to kick them out and them not feel like they've lost the hope that they gained than to trust and then something not go right and they lose it again and they've been defeated again. And so we've had people, one of my favorite guys, I dearly love him. I say he had the dirtiest mouth I've ever heard and was the meanest person I've ever met. And he's also one of my favorite people.
Okay. Yeah.
And, I mean, he would just test us in all the ways. And he'd be like, just kick me out. Just kick me out. And we'd be like, hey, Ray, we're not going to kick you out. That's not the goal here. Let's talk about what's going on. And so a lot of it is just rebuilding that trust and supplying resources for whatever they need, whether it's, counseling or addiction recovery type stuff or mental health. There's just a variety of things, getting their medication that they need or lining them up to see a doctor, I mean, like just those things that kind of come back in. And then as we work through those, get them set up for success. And we've had people that, we had one woman and she was old. She was older. And she refused to sleep in the bed because she didn't want it taken away again. And, there's so much trauma that we don't think about that's underlying the longer people are out that they experience and stuff like that. And so, you work with these people. Both of those people have now been housed or in housing and are doing well and have been for a while. And so I think it's just a matter of those things, as well as like teaching things like it's okay to set a boundary, or let's talk about what it looks like I had one friend, he got into housing. This was when we very first started, before the hotel, like we were just under the bridge and he called me and he was like, hey, I'm going to make a hamburger. How long do I leave it in the microwave? And I was like, oh my gosh, do not make yourself a hamburger in the microwave. I'm on my way over. Like, let's do it the right way. You're going to be sick. But I mean, like for people that haven't done that or haven't done it in a while, it's just a relearning piece and what it looks like to be a good neighbor and, how to ask for help and how to advocate for yourself. There's just so many pieces that we walk with people so that when we put them in housing, they still have us. We're still there, still walking with them. But maybe they have a little bit more confidence in their ability to maintain that housing and to be stable in it. So we do that. We do housing stability. We're going to do the RCC. Excited about that. We're hoping that it'll get opened in the spring. We're working towards that. A lot of pieces, and that's funded through the city, through their Pathway Home staff. And then our big thing that we've been working on for so many years, that I'm so very excited about, is City Lights Village. So that'll be 75 permanent houses for people that are coming out of chronic homelessness. And so that has been a passion and a dream and work of love. It's been about 7 years now, really looking to understand what works, what doesn't work, what's unique about our community, and just how to do it in such a very dignified, hopeful way. And so that's coming. We're hoping, we're still fundraising for that and hoping that it'll open in 2026. So
2026, that'd be 9 years.
We're getting there.
Yeah, yes. And so that place, so that's kind of north,
Hmm.
kind of up by Mohawk Park. Is that right?
Mohawk Park is where the RCC is going to be, and then the village will be at 46th Street North between Peoria and Lewis.
Okay. So 75 units, kind of its own community, its own village, and then you'll have like resources there, and and you said permanent housing. So somebody can get in. They're 45 years old. They can stay there till they're till they pass away. That's
if they want to.
If they want to.
Yes. Yeah, so it's permanent housing. We know that for a lot of our people that are experiencing chronic homelessness, their lifespan is shorter, just because of the things that they've endured and things like that on the streets. And so, but yeah, they can live there forever. And then we'll office out of there. So all of our housing stability services will be there. We're building in rooms for partner agencies to come in our community center. And then we'll also be providing services to people out north that might need a little bit of support. What we have found as we've done some community engagement is there are a lot of people that are experiencing homelessness out there, whether they're couch surfing as a family or friend, or living in tents in people's backyards. And so those people don't typically come downtown to receive the services. And so we want to be as much of a resource for them out there. We are there. We know what we're doing. And so we'll probably end up hiring some positions just specifically for outreach in North Tulsa.
Okay. And so like how much, so there's 75 homes. How much is a house?
So sponsoring a house is going to be $75,000. So we are building all of our houses here. We originally were going to bring them in, but we really are doing everything we can to keep donor dollars in Tulsa.
Oh, very awesome.
And not be spending anywhere outside of that. And so we found a local builder that we're working with that will build those houses on site, and we're very excited about it. They're so very dignified and so beautiful. And then we'll also have a community center there. We'll have 2 laundry facilities, so neighbors will be able to wash their clothes and everything, all of that. So
okay, so if somebody wants to like sponsor or that kind of stuff,
just call me. We'll get back to. There's plenty more sponsorships.
Yeah, come out. You could see it. You could view all that kind of stuff. And
yeah, definitely. We're finishing up infrastructure right now. It's almost finished. We're going to start our electrical work.
Okay.
And then we're hoping to start building in the spring. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
And so, I mean, so really kind of what it sounds like to me is, so it started under the bridge 11 years ago. And then just like, as there's a need, it's like, oh, this is a need. Let's find a way to meet it. Right. And then there's probably other needs. It's like, oh, they're doing that well. We don't need to meet that need because that needs being met. But in Tulsa, like, I mean, so we're filming this in December. I'll probably, when people are watching, it's probably going to be January, but, it'll be, so we got a new mayor who like one of the major campaign issues was housing and people who are experiencing homelessness. Like, why in your mind why are we at this place in which that is a major issue in Tulsa?
Right.
Why is people who are experiencing homelessness so big on our minds right now?
I mean, I think we're seeing it spread throughout Tulsa. So, in the past, it's kind of been localized to downtown, where downtown people or churches are seeing it. But now I think it's even spreading out further, and we're seeing it across Tulsa in different ways, which is gaining more talk. More people getting a little, concerned about it. And so, because it feels like it's affecting them. And so, I think, what did you say Jeff had said on the...
How many?
Yeah.
We're 11,000 total units in the Tulsa area behind. I want to say it was like 6,800 affordable units behind.
Yeah. So I think the study that they said was that we need 13,000 houses in the next 10 years.
So maybe that was, yeah.
But I mean, it's huge. And there's this need for houses of all different classes, but when we back up on that, then people are in the apartments that we would people in, the lower income apartments, when there's not anything. So it really is across the scan of everything. We need houses in all different price brackets and all different categories. Like, we need all of it. And we really have to be thoughtful about it. But I think when we look at, you know, what isn't working, we know that Oklahoma is 11th in evictions in the nation. So we have to start somewhere, like looking at this eviction crisis, looking at who is evicting, looking at why they're being evicted, because if we just continue to put people out, then it's even harder to get them back in if they have a formal eviction. And also, like, we're just adding to our numbers of people that we need housing for.
Yeah.
I think we have to look at that. I think we have to also look at, as we're housing people and putting them back, do they have the supports to be successful?
Right.
We know for people that are working that our pay is very, very low for what apartments cost and houses cost today. So people are really struggling in that. So we're seeing more families be evicted because they can't afford to live in an apartment or house. I know we've definitely seen an increase in family homelessness under the bridge and with people that we're working with. And then on the other side, we've got to have housing. And so it's really kind of multifaceted. We see, we know that mental health and addiction and all of those things can play into it as well. But if we have the supports in place to work with people, then it doesn't mean that you should be homeless just because you have a mental health issue or an addiction issue.
Yeah. So there's all these factors. I do think, because we're here in Midtown, and it really is. I mean, there'll be occasions where somebody's sleeping outside of our church because there's some places you can stay away from the wind, right? And that's
or on your cameras.
Or I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That you can do that, and just knowing, again, Midtown is not the place you typically would think about it, but it is. It's here. It's everywhere. And so and we want there to be an easy solution, and there's just not.
There's not.
I mean, obviously, like, we do need housing, right? I mean, that is probably the easiest part of what it seems like, because we just need more housing.
Right.
But that to really help people long term, and that walking with, now you've used the word dignity multiple times. So, like, because most of the time when we think about, and those who are experiencing homelessness, and dignity is not our go-to, but why is that your go-to?
Oh man, I just think it's a super important piece of the work that we do. I have seen time and again where people will rise to how we elevate them.
Yeah.
And so when we provide people with this sense of you are valuable, then they act out of that value.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've just seen it over and over again.
Yeah.
And also, I just think that one of our core values is that we're going to give our best first. And I think that just because somebody is experiencing poverty or somebody is experiencing difficulty in their life, we don't match that, right? Like we don't match that. We're gonna lift them.
Yeah.
And so that's just a piece that we've always kind of incorporated into the things that we do, that people have value. From my own personal beliefs, like I am valued by God, and in turn, I'm gonna value others in that same way. And so we do, and we say, when you donate dignity. Like we don't want your coat that the zipper doesn't zip in it.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. We don't want something that is so paint splattered and stained just because they'll take it. Like we want them to know when they put the things that are donated to us on their bodies, that we were thoughtful and that they mattered. I had a mom one time, I'm still friends with her. She's military. And when we very first started Nightlight, she would come down all the time. She was sleeping outside, and she's now in housing. It has been for probably, 8 years now, 9 years. But we're still friends.
Yeah.
And so, but she told me one time, she said, I'd lost my kids. I'd lost everything. I was outside. And I knew, though, that if I would just make the appointments with my kids be Friday after Nightlight, I could come get really nice clothes so I didn't have to look homeless, even though I was when I met my kids at the park.
Yeah, okay.
And so that really stuck with me of like,
Yeah.
it's so much more than just those clothes because those clothes spoke something of her
Yeah.
and she like connected to that. And so I think it's so important. It's very easy to be like, oh, I've had these whatever that I, you know, haven't worn in forever and they're stained and it's easier to feel good about donating them to this organization. But like, how much more does it mean when you think, man, those jeans are gonna go on a mom that's gonna go see her kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that she can feel good about them, and she can feel good as she's trying to work and restore this relationship with her family. So, it's a huge piece of what we do, and I think it's in everything. It's in what we donate. It's in how we approach our friends. It's in the type of housing that we want to provide for them and the support services that we want to give them. And we want them to know that they have value.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, like, yeah, these are individuals, these are people. There's a quote by Mr. Rogers. There isn't anybody you couldn't learn to love once you knew their story.
Yeah.
And so it's like this, I mean, and thinking about, your volunteers who, that, they had a brother and it's so easy for me, and I think for all of us, to be passing on the street and to be weirded out or to be grossed out or to something because there's something and even sometimes we don't even want to look at, right? Like, we avert our eyes and there's something about like looking. I mean, you talked at the very beginning with Hurricane, like he couldn't handle the eye contact. And so to be able to do that, these are our neighbors who we are. I mean, yeah, it's a person of faith, right? Like we're commanded to love your neighbors as we love ourselves. And if I want new jeans, or when I want new jeans for my friend who's a neighbor who really does need not just something to wear on their legs, but they need something to be proud of, something to have dignity with.
We do these things, we call them street sleep outs, and we usually do them like once a season. It's been a minute since I've been out, but the one of the very first ones that I went on in Tulsa. So I had done this where we sleep out, use the resources our neighbors use, learn, and then we donate back to them. So like if I use Iron Gate to eat, then we're going to donate back to Iron Gate so that we're not just taking replenishing. But so the first one I went on was in Austin, Texas, with Community First Village down there. And it was wild because I didn't know where any of the resources were. I didn't know anything, right? Like I truly was like stuck in a city and was like, figure out. And I was like, please don't lose me because I don't know what I'm doing.
Can I have a GPS tracker just so somebody could come get
it? It was really intimidating. So, but then we came back to Tulsa and we're like, okay, let's do this here.
Yeah.
And so we mixed it up and we only took 2 of our own items, and everything else that we had to be out of our donations because we wanted to see if the donations that we were providing to our friends under the bridge were good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, I think I took like my glasses and I might have took my own backpack. But everything else was donated. And I had put on a pair of shoes. And I'm telling you, within 8 hours, the blisters on my feet. And I thought I had picked out maybe a pretty good pair. And I had the choice to like rummage through everything we had, right? But my feet were tore up. And we were out for like 2 days that time. I've been out. We've done another one. We went out for a full week, which was a little bit more challenging in other ways. But it really made me consider like when we're accepting donations, when we look through them and get them ready for Nightlight or for somebody that comes by the building that needs something, to be really thoughtful of what I donate and what we accept as donations because they feel like, oh, I finally got a pair of shoes. These are flopping up for my feet. And then they put them on. And if they're not good shoes, like that's a big deal to be in for a week or 2 weeks or until you get another pair.
Yeah. So now I'm fascinated and terrified. Like this street sleep out, like, I mean, is an embodied experience. You're going out, you're living
as best we can.
As best you can. And also you with the full knowledge that, okay, on Wednesday,
Right.
I'm going to go back home and I'm going to sleep in my bed. It's going to be nice and comfortable.
Right.
But like,
Or that I can just walk into the day center and say, "Hey, Mac, help me," right?
yeah, yeah,
Because I have an advantage.
you have relationships. So yeah, so tell me, but like, what has been? I mean, the shoes. What are some of the other eye-opening experiences
Oh,
from walking in
yeah.
the
Man, so many. I think that that's one of the things that we do that is so powerful in knowing where we need to advocate, right? So, I mean, I've been kicked out of everywhere or off of everywhere. You go to sit and they're like, you can't sit here or you can't be here or you can't, and you're like, well, where can I be? Like, where can I use the bathroom? Or where can I yeah, there's just so many things. We picked one weekend to go out and it was like a monsoon. It was in April and we went with our friends, Deacon Kevin from Catholic Charities asked to go out on one with us. So he was out with us and if he wouldn't have been there, I'd have been like, I'm calling it. It was just like it rained the whole time. And I mean just pouring down rain. And so that was really like you're in wet shoes, you're in wet clothes, you can't get dry, you can't go in any I mean, it was wild. But really, really a good experience in the fact that like now we better understand what that is for people. I also got sick out when we were out for a week one time. I got so sick and it was a Wednesday night. We were downtown and I church was in session in one of the churches down there and they wouldn't let us in. I was like, "Can I please just use your bathroom? I'm so sick." And they were like, "I'm sorry, no." And the person with me was like, "Well, what if we go to church?" And they're like, "Nope." And I mean, we were three girls out sleeping out. I mean, we had our backpacks and we had sleeping bags and so it's challenging, right? It's very challenging and you understand a little bit better and not to the full extent because we have all the safeties in place, right? Like we can go in and not at the church, obviously, but like any shelter, like I know those are all our partners.
yeah.
I could find a phone and call home and there's a million different things that I could do that make it not the same. But we do have a better understanding of how those experiences day after day could harden somebody.
Yeah. Well, that's what I just like just being rejected, right? I mean, and now, I mean, I've pastored a church, so here for I've heard the stories. I mean, and that's what I often believe them to be is just a story that somebody says, and because I don't really have that relationship building, it's not like, oh, I can tell this story's real. This, this is,
Yeah.
so, and I've become hard. And it's just, oh, I don't want to. Because I know that the time it's going to take to get through the story, to get to the other side, when, it's like you really, in my mind, it's like you're just looking for food or you're just looking for something real quick or you want money and we're not going to give you money or whatever the case
Right.
might be. Like, then my heart gets hardened. And then I think, yeah, to deal with the rejection of again and again on the other end of things, I'm thinking about my experience, but to deal with that rejection of like, no, I don't even have time. I'm not going to consider it's pouring down rain. It's just, we had a bad experience one time. And so now the answer is just no.
Right. Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah. And it's so hard though, because like you understand the other side of that too, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, we have an office, we have somebody that's got a tent on it right now. Like we rent, what does that look like? And
Yeah.
how do we navigate? I mean, like we're providers, so we have somebody with a tent on our property,
Yeah.
and you understand like we've been burned before too. It doesn't always
Yep.
go beautifully. And so it's just this balance of like humanity and how do we see our neighbor and also have healthy boundaries and kind of walk both of those spaces in a way that sees people and brings hope and
Yeah.
not devastation. And so uh, it I always think that I leave those feeling guilty, one, to go home and take a shower and sleep in a bed.
Yeah.
But also really thoughtful of all the different pieces that we have the advantage of seeing through those experiences.
Why do you feel guilty?
Oh man, because we get to go home, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably work to be done in a counseling session. Should but I think we share that a lot from our neighbors that we house too. When they're in a house and their friends are still on the streets. And one of the things that we deal with a lot is them not setting a boundary that people can't come stay with them
Okay.
permanently,
Yeah,
else then they're at risk for eviction. But I think it's interesting. But I think, after you've been out and you've sat with people and you've stayed at their encampment, we've had our friends very generously invited us to come. We ran into them. I knew them from Nightlight. But we just ran into them on the street when we were out sleeping out. And they're like, well, where are you staying tonight? We're like, I have no idea. And they're like, well, come stay at our encampment. And we're like, is this a safe choice?
yeah.
And we chose to. And it was the most beautiful, probably one of the most generous experiences I've ever had. Um, but then at the end of the day, we get to go home, And so that what housing is, how hard it is to get in, how hard it is, that whole process and how time consuming and people are still out there and there's sometimes just not good answers and it's hard. It's hard to leave people. It's hard to leave people out even at nightlight or uh, especially in the winter when it comes up and people by name and their story and you care about them and you don't have an answer for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is, I mean, again, to me, it just feels like such a big, I mean, there's, again, thousands of people who need houses, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, so many questions, but I mean, to think, makes me think of a quote by Andy Stanley who said, do for one what you wish you could do for all, right? Like, and so I think, okay, hey, we can do this for one. Maybe that's all we could do, but what do we do? So there's I mean, and part of what I'm trying to do is just wrap my mind around this. So, there's like the HUD definition of homeless, which is people who are on the street, right?
Right.
And so like point in time count, like what was the last point in time count?
Yeah, it's like 13, a little over 1,300.
A little over 1,300. And then you have the kind of, I don't know exactly, those who are experiencing homelessness, which it could be everything from
Couch surfing
on the street. So and of course, poverty is a different mindset. It's like, I remember some Ruby Payne work that I learned was like, one of the mindsets of poverty was, just like people coming over. Because if I was to say, hey, Sarah, can I come stay at your house? You'd be like, okay, well, what time are you going to get rent? Or what time are you leaving? And that's a different thing with people in poverty. It's like, hey, can you come over? Sure, stay,
right.
for as long as, until I kick you out or you find the next place. So we've got couch surfing, people living in the backyard, tent, other such stuff. Kids who are staying not with their family, with their parents, staying with a friend, that kind of stuff. All of that is all part of it's going on right around us all the time. And that it feels so overwhelming. So yeah, and so you've been doing this 11 years. Hey, I'm like right in front. I have some questions about that, but like, how do you deal with the discouragement?
Yeah.
How do you deal with you walk with somebody and they mess it up or you can't do. You have 5 houses and you get to choose who doesn't go.
Mhm.
What is that like for you?
It's really hard. I think, one of the things that I have tried to build into our culture, whether it's with our staff or volunteer staff, is just really very, very open communication because this field can burn you out that fast. Just whether it's the people or the circumstances, it can burn you out if you don't have the right support systems in place.
Yeah.
And so we really try to build a really good support system and a really open communication about how people are doing. And also, we all have lives outside of this, right? So, we have other things that we're dealing with in our own personal lives that are even outside of this that are heavy. And so I'm really proud of our team because I feel like if somebody is off, then we're very honest with that.
Okay.
One of the things that we do at Nightlight before we even start the night, while all of y'all are at orientation, is we have a staff huddle and we do a Brene Brown two-word check-in.
Okay.
And so that word might be like Thankful Thursday, or it might be really sad, or whatever. And then we can go back and check in with those relationships that we need to. So everybody knows at the beginning of the night what we're starting from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's some of the things that we do just in culture, just to make sure that we're checking in with each other, that we have relationship, that we're doing okay. And if somebody's having a rough time, then, maybe they need to step away for the night, or maybe they need to be there because also sometimes it's really encouraging to be there. or maybe they need a little bit lighter load or just to be cared for a little bit differently. But I think it is hard. We've had people that have backslid that it is devastating and hard. We're dealing with a friend of mine that I've had in housing for 8 years right now that I'm like, oh, he's on a slide, like he's slippery right now, and I don't know which way he's going to go. And so we're leaning in and talking a lot about like what are other resources we can put around him, like where has he done really well in the past versus, and I just really think that the key is to have good people around you. We also have really great partners. I'm sit on the leadership council for Away Home for Tulsa, and there's never been a moment where I couldn't call Mac at the day center and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this, and I don't know what to do,"
Yeah.
or "I'm feeling this way," or any of our partners that are walking that too. That sometimes it's helpful to just kind of bounce some things off, or to be frustrated about the same thing, even so.
Yeah, yeah. So to be able to share
Yeah.
that, and so really it is about community that and I mean that's really the answer. That's the answer to everything. Yeah. So we need people to be like, yeah, I'm not alone in this. Whether it be trying to find a house or how do I make a hamburger, or how do I deal with somebody who after 8 years,
Right.
whether it be addiction or whatever it might be, that's kind of turned back.
backslide.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think also, like, sometimes I think one of the hardest things is when people are coming and they're ready for that next step and we don't have like, housing is not available and we're still going to be waiting. And what do you do? Like, that's hard. It's hard to say, I'm sorry, I have nothing for you. And so a lot of times what I found is to be able to, and same thing, that community, to be able to sit and listen, or to be like, okay, I don't have the answer to that right now. We're going to keep working on that. But what are some other things that I can do to support?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always something else that you can do, even if it's like sitting down with somebody for a meal, or like having them come alongside and help volunteer. Sometimes just feeling needed is an important piece.
They have something to look forward to. I'm worth something because I can give something, right? Yeah, that really does make a lot of sense to be able to do. And again, with the housing situation that we're in, it's like, okay, you've done everything right. You are on the wait list. I was talking with Tina from Family Promise, and they have like 119 families on their wait list. And it's just absurd to think, okay, you've made all the phone calls, you've done everything, and you just take a number, right? And you just wait 2 months or wait 3 months or whatever it might be. And that's just for a shelter thing. Cause I mean, so in my mind, and help me if I'm wrong. So somebody who's experiencing homelessness, oftentimes they'll, look for like an emergency shelter, right? Overnight, just someplace, then maybe kind of a more temporary shelter, 30, 60, 90, 120 days is what you all are doing. To be able to then get into some permanent housing that's a good flow.
Yeah. And that's if it goes that way.
That's if it goes that way. Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're getting the other services that they could do. I'm going to give you a magic wand. What do you do in the city of Tulsa? You have a magic wand. You get to wave it once or twice and boom, this thing happens. And that's going to be something that just moves us forward, that fast forwards us. What do you do?
Wow. Man, I need more magic wands. I'm going to give myself more magic wands.
Always ask for your wishes. Yeah.
We have to, oh man, I think we have to have housing, but we have to have housing that has the supportive services around it in the right way. Which, we're trying to do. The 75 is a drop in a bucket for what.
I mean, you could fill that up in one day, right? In one day, you could fill it all. You could
slowly. So I think we have to have housing with supportive services. I think we have to figure out a better eviction process. I don't know, trauma response type situation for landlords. I don't know. Man, a wand.
You already waved it twice.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I truly believe that in order for us to solve homelessness, we have to have more housing and community. Like we have to have those things together.
Yeah.
And if that's, activating our churches, if that's activating our communities in a way that we educate and teach and have them come alongside, but our organizations cannot do it by ourselves.
Yeah. And I think it's so, I mean, as a pastor, like I'm thinking of, okay, how do I mean, when you stay on the street, I can remember what you called it.
Street sleep out. Yeah.
Street sleep out. I thought, wow, I should probably do that. Wow, I don't want to do that. Like that was my literal thought. I was like, nope. That's a good idea. I'm glad somebody's doing that. Absolutely.
It's been on about 12 of them, and it's still my literal thought.
Yeah. So it's just like, but I think of, there's an empathy, and I do think of like so many of our typical church people, right?
Mhm.
So like that life is hard enough, right? There's enough fears, there's enough worries that it's like, oh, I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to think about that. I don't want to have to lean into that. Because I'm just struggling to survive.
Right.
Now, I think there is part of us that like we thrive when we serve, when we give, when we not just like, oh, I feel better because I put in $1 at my loose change into the Salvation Army, which is great, right? Like, okay, that's better than nothing, but like, huh, understanding that to be in community really is the gift, right? To lean in. And what does it look like just to lean in where we are as we are? What is the easiest place to take a step forward, right? Not, okay, I'm going to go from the south side of Tulsa and I'm going to stay up for a month living downtown. No, what's this? How do you take that little step, right? And maybe that's volunteering on Thursday night, just doing that little bit.
Yeah, I always say like we have to have proximity to people, right? Like we can't understand from a distance.
Mm,
And that may even be in our own churches.
yeah.
That may be our neighbor next door. That may be like it's really difficult to be community from a distance. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
We're not built that way. And so I always say like there are a million causes across Tulsa
Yeah.
that need champion, that need people involved and on the ground and in it and all the ways, whether it be financial or personal or whatever. And we just need people to be in proximity to those issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And at a time in which like loneliness is higher and people are not joining things. And I mean, I think about just all these variety of we are not leaning in. We don't have these kind of third spaces as common third spaces, especially kind of just across like kind of economic line third spaces, right? You may have your third space where you join with your friends who do your thing, but to really like where will I have a meal with the unless it's like really like schools are really a hazy place. Our kids are, it's like, oh yeah, they have, I mean, again, my kids go to Edison and the economic diversity at that school, I mean, is because of where the homes are located.
Right.
There could be some of that, but not as much of like just.
I mean, and I still have to check myself, right? Like I think I've shared with y'all a Bob Glock quote one time that we're still rough drafts of who we're becoming, which is my favorite.
That's great.
Ever. Yeah. And so I know when we probably in our first or second year of Nightlight, we have some friends that would come down and eat. So they had a home, but they were very poor. And they would come down to have a meal together. Okay. And that's a save on money. And my son and their son was the same age, or is the same age, and wanted to get him a Christmas present. And so we were taking them a turkey basket or something anyway. And so Ben had got their son a present, and we had taken it. Now, the mom worked during the day, so we needed to take it at night. And so they lived over off of Peoria and 61st.
Right.
And so we pull in, and the apartment's rough and the blinds are all broken on all the things. And my son says to me, and he's either 8 or 9 at this time. And he said, why did they choose to live here? And I was like, oh my goodness. Like I've totally, like he understands homelessness, but he does not understand the connection to poverty and like how closely intertwined those two things are.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, they don't choose to live here. This is where they have to live. And like, what would it be like if people got to choose? Like, that's one of the things with the City Lights Village. Like, I'm so excited because we want people to choose to live there.
Yeah.
Like, they want to live there because it's beautiful and it's warm and welcoming and you feel a sense of belonging and, But it was a moment for me that I was like, man, I really have to even check myself because now the bridge is a very comfortable place for me, right? So, like, where am I even pushing my discomfort?
wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm very comfortable around my friends that are experiencing homelessness. And so, I don't know, there's just always lessons like that where I'm still becoming, right? I'm still trying to figure out
That's great.
what I'm going to be.
Yeah. And to think, that's your domain.
Yeah.
That bridge. And this is, you look out and you see friends and you see family and you see people that you know and that know you. And so, it's not scary. So how do you keep pushing yourself? Let me kind of I'm curious. So you're a nurse by trade,
Yep.
right? So you said this started 11 years ago. So take me back. Let's go back a little bit further. So probably, I'm guessing the seeds were planted 15, 20 years ago. What were the first seeds of like that person or this ministry or this, like, how did the ball get rolling? What was the beginning of that?
Well,
For you?
I'm sure it started way back when I was younger, right? Probably, and I don't even recognize it yet. I mean, sometimes I'm like, man, something will hit me and I'll be like, oh my goodness, like God was doing something. I didn't even know it, right? Like I had no clue. Usually that's how it happens to me anyway. And so I really think if I go back around, probably around 20 years ago, so 15, 20 years ago, there was a moment that I had completely forgot about. Not my proud moment, not a moment that I'm like, yeah, that was me at my best. But I was an ICU nurse, general ICU nurse, and I did trauma and neuro, and then did some medical ICU. So lots of years, 13 years in the ICU. Loved it, loved my job. Didn't leave it because I was like, this is awful. I really, truly love that work, and still use all of those skills today.
Okay.
But anyway, I had come in for a shift on a weekend, and I had got my assignment, and they're like, "We're giving you the homeless guy." I remember it so clearly now, and I had forgot about the story until probably about 8 years ago. I was speaking to a group of women, and it wasn't even on my thing to talk about, and I got up there, and it just, like, hit me and I was just remembering, and I was like, "I'm gonna tell y'all something that I have never even, like, recounted." But anyway, so they had told me I got this guy. He was homeless. He had a brain bleed and was dead, but on a ventilator. And they were trying to figure out his family. And I think about this family all the time, and I wonder if they've ever been under the bridge. And it is like a little bit sensitive because I just feel like, man, they changed my life. And I didn't know it. I didn't know it at that time, but I didn't want to take care of him. I was horrible attitude. Like, I'll do anything. I'll switch anybody. I don't want to take care of this guy. And no really even reason for it, and not had a bad experience. It was just my attitude. And they were like, they knew his name, but that's it. And he was on the ventilator. They were trying to find family before they discontinue the ventilator and let it go. And so I was sitting there being ugly in my head, maybe out loud too, and it just kind of hit me. This thing just washed over me that was like, that is somebody. And I can remember the fight within myself of like, I don't want to think that, like, but it is. Why are you acting like this? And so I got up and I gowned, and he smelled, and they had told me this. So I put on a couple masks and everything, and went in, and I stood at the end of his bed, his burly guy. And I just thought, man, somebody knows you. Tulsa's not that big. And they had said that they had cut off his clothes. And so I got in the closet and dug through his bag of clothes, and he had a wallet in there. And I opened it up, and in the very back pocket of that wallet, there was a note. And I opened it up, and it had the day center's phone number on it. And so it was a weekend, so I called a day center, and I knew like HIPAA and all the things. And so I said, I know you probably can't tell me anything, but I'm Sarah. I'm from St. Francis. I have this patient. This is his name. I'm trying to find any family. And of course, they had to make a million phone calls to tell me anything.
Yeah.
And so they call me back, and they're like, well, we have this number. It's from 10 years ago. It may be good. It may not be. I don't know. And so I called it, and it was his sister. And they came in, and were so grateful that I took the time to call. Of course, they didn't know what a brat I had been prior to that, and just horrible person. Um, and I I got to hear their story, and I got to hear his story. They flew his daughter in from California, and she crawled up. They had a pretty estranged relationship, pretty rough relationship, but she crawled up in bed. I mean, she was an adult, next to him, and worked all that out. I mean, like he wasn't there for but he was, physically, and we they were with him, and we extubated him and let him go, and there was just this healing piece that I got to be a part of that I didn't deserve to be a part of. Um, and I think like now, and I had totally forgot that, when we decided to start Nightlight and do all of those things. But I think like what a gift to be able to go back and remember that, and to know like that they started planting seeds back then, that he was somebody, and he did matter to somebody, and that he had a life, and that he had his own traumas that led him to that place. And it just like softened a piece of me that I didn't even know was hard, or that needed to be softened, or that would kind of lay some groundwork for things that we do later on. So
Yeah. Well, and that idea of like he was somebody.
yeah.
I mean, that to me is, I mean, hopefully I can remember that, right? Like that is somebody out there. And even for his estranged daughter, he was like her having the ability to have that moment of forgiveness, of reconciliation, of whatever it needed to be, right? That the degree of trauma that was lessened, right? That was healed, just taking that time. So that's like 15-ish years ago. So then
Wow.
you all and a group of your friends said, let's do something.
Well,
How does that happen? Like,
yeah. So we had, so I ended up with idiopathic tracheal stenosis. So
I have no idea what that.
I know
But
all
that's
the
okay.
things. So basically scar tissue forming in my trachea.
Okay.
I had 18 surgeries here in Tulsa. Ended up going to Boston for a major surgery after a couple of years of dealing with this. It was really scary. Like they didn't know how to deal with it. I was 6 months pregnant when they diagnosed me, so I had a baby and couldn't breathe and all the things. And it was a really scary time. And my last surgery here, the doctor said, this is probably what you're going to die from one of these days, and you're probably going to have a trach, and you need to get your mind wrapped around that. And it was devastating, honestly, in that moment. And I
And you're a nurse, so
I was a nurse.
you know all these things,
Yes.
right? In a way,
But see, I had to load me up to a step down ICU, like all the things. They're like, what ICU do you want? I was like, Dad, I don't want any of them to see me without clothes on. I've worked with these people, but like, yeah, I mean, I understood exactly what she was saying, and it was really, really scary. And so I kind of sat on that for a minute and went home on a lot of steroids after a few days in the hospital. And I thought, man, I advocate for people every single day. Why would I not advocate for myself? I just don't think this is it.
Okay.
And so I researched, my husband and I researched, and we ended up in Boston with an incredible surgeon there that had hands as big as a bear and worked on the tiniest little piece of my airway. So, yeah, I went in, we flew down there, and he saw me and then did surgery the next day. I can't remember if it was a 6 or an 8 hour surgery. I was asleep, so I don't know. But he told me before we're going in, he said, I don't know, like there's lots of risk with this. You could end up with a trach. You could end up never being able to speak again because it's so close to your vocal cords. Like we just don't know until I get in there. I might get in there and it be inflamed in a way that I can't even do anything, and we'll just stop, and that's that. And so there were a lot of different things, but when we went, we were there for 2 weeks. We ended up having the surgery, obviously, and we were there for 2 weeks. And our community, like blood and not blood, I mean, like our families came around us,
Right.
and they lifted us up before we went. They paid for things. They sent gift cards. They took care of my 3 little kids that were here. I mean, we were completely surrounded by community and to the point of where I'm pretty sure somebody paid for that surgery because it was out of network and we have not paid a penny. And all of a sudden there was no cost.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And it cost more than my house. It wasn't cheap, you know? And so, I mean, like, people just took care of us, boy. And coming out of that, I couldn't speak for a month, which probably made everybody glad. That's I did not like it. But it really allowed a lot of time for reflection. And so my husband and I were like, man, I don't think we had the words back then, but we really wanted to be community to people that didn't have one. And because we had felt that. And we weren't bad people, but we just weren't doing anything for others in the way that we had just experienced people doing for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
in this moment in which, I mean, the way I'm seeing it is like you are helpless, right? You can't,
I was really helpless. I also had a broken foot at the time, so
you were even more helpless.
I couldn't do anything.
So, but yeah, I mean, here you are, I mean, in this vulnerable position of you're a medical professional and you can't heal yourself, right? And then you have to go to this specialist who may or may not be able to do it. With bills you can't afford, with children that you can't take care of, with all of these things, as vulnerable as you could be. And in that moment of vulnerability, like when you can't hold yourself up, like whoosh, these people, some who know you very well, your families, all this such stuff. And then others probably are like, we're on, like that's, well, they're connected to our church or, they're, she's one of the nurses and there's hundreds of nurses there. We're just going to help out. Yeah. And this community just came around.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
It was incredible. I don't think that people, I don't think people recognize the impact that had on my life.
And not just your life. Now we're talking 11 years later, right? Like, and, all these other, the domino effect of love, the way that it can extend out is just pretty extraordinary. So, sorry.
No, it changed me. And so, so from that, we started looking. We didn't know. We just knew we wanted to do something. And my husband watched a documentary that featured a place in Portland, Oregon that serves under a bridge. And a few weeks after that, I had a friend that was doing a mission trip to Portland. And she posted on Facebook, I went to this incredible thing under this bridge. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So I called her and I said, are you interested in doing this? And she said, yeah. And so I said, well, let me call around and see if there's anything like this already. Because we didn't know because, we weren't in that world.
Yeah.
So called around, talked to people that are now partner agencies. But yeah, and we really had every door shut in our face. We heard like, it's not safe for females, like girls shouldn't be doing this, which is like a challenge to me. I'm like, right yet. But, like we have our stuff. We don't need anything else. We're not interested in doing anything else. And so we kind of sat on it for about a year. And so my family started going down maybe about once a month. We would just take our kids and we would just walk around downtown or take some friends and go walk around downtown. And we'd maybe have sandwiches or maybe have socks or maybe just visit with people, and just, we just listened and learned. And so a year later, on my oldest son, Ben's 8th birthday, he was 7, and I was asking him, like, well, what do you want to do for your birthday? And he said, I don't want a birthday party. I want to go downtown, and I want to take my friends, and I want to feed the homeless. And I was like, well, can we do Star Wars? Because that will be better, because nobody's going to let their kids come with me downtown. And I had a friend at church that was older that had said, you should really listen to him and don't extinguish the fire. Just get as close to it as you can and see what happens. And so I was like, okay, well, she probably knows better than I do. So we did. And all of those kids came and they were handing out sack lunches to business people the same they were as somebody who had nothing, which was really beautiful. And I was like, they just don't see it. Like, they just want to serve. Like, what a heart and the servant. Like, they just want to serve everybody. And so we did that, and it was really beautiful. And then a little bit later, we were in charge of like a group at church to do something. And I was like, well, we're just going to do that again because that was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
And so with that group, we started when we were walking back, it was a big group. So we had two different groups. My husband was in one and I was in the other. And when we got back to the car, both of us were talking about how people kept saying we should do this more often. And I knew, like, I just knew, I was like, this isn't what I want to do more often. I want like a place where people can come. And I don't want to be once a month. Like, I want it to be something set and intentional and just all of things. And so when I got back, I called my friend that had been to Portland and I said, listen, I think we might have a core group. Are you still interested? And she said, yeah. And so she came over and we sat down and talked about like how often we wanted to do it and the why behind it and what our goals were with it. And called up all those people that were like, hey, this is really fun. We're like, hey, you want to do this always? And so
What are you doing for on Thursday nights for the next 20 years?
And so we met with them. We started meeting pretty much immediately after that. We met every week for like 2 months and then had our first night like, and have learned ever since.
Learned ever since. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that really is just, I mean, you know, to me, it's fascinating. People's stories are fascinating to me. So to think through like, yeah, you're low and then coming out and even the gift of like quietness. I mean, I just think like, what would I do if I couldn't speak for a month? And I'd probably like, well, I'm gonna type a lot. But, you know, like I'm gonna, yeah, you know, there's something God does in that silence and that solitude and in that space. And then even like in some ways it feels fast, but in other ways, like, okay, you know, these things are building, and that it's there. And yeah, so now 11 years into the weekly rhythm, what is still, you mentioned this rough draft, like what has God done? And I say God, I mean life, learning, those kinds of things, like that is just like, golly, this is so transformative for you.
Yeah. Oh man, so much. I mean, I just think I'm so different, you know? I mean, I'm still me, right? But I like just the way that I approach things, I feel like is so different. And just really being willing to slow down and to listen and to hear what's not being said sometimes. I think I'm way more present than what I used to be with people, like, and really recognizing that people have things going on that they don't say, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or even myself, like, what am I not saying?
yeah, yeah.
And where is the protection? And why is it there?
Yep.
And I don't know. I mean, I've learned a lot. I feel like I've learned a lot more about from the beginning, you know, it was very much this I don't know what I would like underdog, which I always still feel like we're an underdog on everything because people just totally discounted what we would do.
Yeah.
But I also think like there's a new growth of like it's not wrong to be the underdog, but also like how do we also be a branch, right? Like how are we reaching out to people that and forming those partnerships where you're not just trying to forge it alone, right?
Yeah.
And like that's been a learning piece for me. And also like recognizing the other underdogs and how do we like lift them and pull them along.
Okay.
Where people might be shutting doors on them, but we're like opening those doors and saying, come alongside. Like, let's see what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of pieces of that which are probably more like leadership things that I didn't have that I've developed. I think that I learned a lot about people that are different coming together, whether it's housed and unhoused, whether it's the Baptist and the Methodist and the Church of Christ and the Catholics. You know, I mean, like the bridge is such a beautiful, I don't know, like taught of all these different people and things and all with the same mission and the same care and focus, and it just is a really beautiful piece that we get to be a part of that just was so very unanticipated and unplanned for. Um, I think that I am somebody who likes to have control. My Enneagram 8 like comes out real hard sometimes, but I think I've also become better at like being like, well, I don't have control of that, and like God's gonna do what He does with it, and we're just gonna wait and see, and I'm gonna be patient, and I have really good people around me that have been great leaders at helping develop some of those pieces in me. Then, I mean, this isn't what I mean.
You were, yeah.
I was a nurse, which was a lot of work, and I had to have a lot of leadership skills in the ICU. But like, I never thought I was going to lead a nonprofit in Tulsa that mobilized thousands of people every year and cared for hundreds of people experiencing homelessness, or sat on a leadership council, or spoke up in these meetings on homelessness. That's not anything that I was trained or planned for. It's just the table that I came to. So.
Yeah. Well, and then you've had so yeah, sometimes we just learn as we go, right? Like we have to learn the skill, and so we do that. And then other times, oh man, that thing that I learned back then, now I put it into practice.
Right.
So I felt a weird question, and I don't know if it was from me, if it was from God, whatever. What are you holding on to that you need to let go?
Oh, man. Whoa. I'm going back to my therapy session.
Well, so this may not be a question for the podcast. I was just like, I need to ask this question. What are you holding on to that you need to let go?
Question. Man. I mean, I still fight for control over things.
Right.
And it is like a daily letting go.
Okay.
It really is for me, because I want to know what's happening. I want to control what's happening. And, you just can't.
Yeah.
And so it is a daily letting go of that for me, and just knowing like I'm going to show up and I'm going to stay focused and I'm going to do the best I can. And that's going to be good enough.
Mm.
And I have the right people around me, and we're going to keep moving the way that we need to help others.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of things that, I mean, we've definitely had a lot of, this has not been a journey that has not come without a lot of hardship too.
Yeah.
I mean, we've definitely experienced a lot, and we come up against a lot anytime you're pushing people out of their comfort zone, or pushing and advocating. It can rub people wrong, and they'll show up.
Well, and I know, I mean, you had a big thing in this year, well, probably even years before, was dealing with the homeowner and city and all that sort of stuff. That is, I mean, so one of the things
That's probably what I need to let go.
what does forgiveness look like? How does it look like to move forward in that way? Because I do think these things that are holding on, and I've been thinking a lot and about I talk about like the ministry of nudging, that, and I got this from somebody, that, and I thought, well, the difference between like a nudge and a push is how willing it is for something to move, right? And I think about Jenga a lot, of like, okay, which of these is, it's like, I'm doing the same amount of work and this piece isn't moving. And if I try to move it, the whole thing might come down, or at least that's my fear. Right. And then other times it's like, just a little nudge. It's like, this is good. Cause I do think this idea of how do we move people out of our comfort zones, and that is so terrifying. And sometimes we can jump the gun. We can say, you've got to move out. I mean, we're both parents, right? It's like, sometimes I keep them in their comfort zone and they don't need to be there. That's my probably default, is like, I'm going to protect you. Right. But then others like, okay, I gotta put you out there. And then sometimes I gotta nudge you, like, go, you can do this. And so, yeah, what is that nudging? I don't know. I
think that's great. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's us, constantly too. I mean, there are, whether it's, property owners or it's neighbors that are uncomfortable with what you're building around them, and like, how do we walk that, and how do we like, we see things as like humanity and dignity, and we're doing this for people, and it's a good cause, but it's also causing some friction and tension, and all these things over here, and how do we navigate that in a way that also honors this person and what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of nudging, and I think I always just go back to, if I can get people in proximity to people, then we have a better chance at a stronger community. But I think also that comes straight at me, right? Like, how do I put myself in proximity of somebody else that doesn't agree with me,
Yeah.
so that that can be a stronger community too? We don't have to necessarily agree, but if I can at least get myself in a position where I can hear them and try to listen to where they're coming from.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's just I'm putting myself in your shoes, and so it's not going to work out perfectly. But I would think, yeah, the way you potentially could see somebody, is the way that that person sees that person, right? Or somebody who's experiencing homelessness, of just like it's so easy to other people, and to be, and I do think that again, whether it be a landlord or other such stuff, that it's so it just constantly putting ourselves in the position of, that's my neighbor, like that's the one that God has called me to love. That's the one. And then again and again and again. And especially when they fight against you. Right. And I know, again, putting people in proximity. So 5 years from now, let's do 10 years from now, 10 years from now, what would you look back on and feel like, yes, like just yes, the sense of like satisfaction. I don't know if it's the right word, but that's the word that's there.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, I can kind of relate to like, I can look back on the hotel and I'll be like, man, wow, that was incredible. Like, we delivered Thanksgiving baskets to some of our neighbors last week, and some of these friends I haven't seen in 3 years, because our housing stability team is there more often. But I walk in and they treat me like they'd seen me yesterday. And he's still their best friend.
Yeah.
And I think like that was a testament to the relationships we built at the hotel when they were living there, when I was basically living with them in the day-to-day. And so, like, when I think about the future, like 10 years from now, I mean, I would love to say, oh, we don't need nightlight, right? Like, let's mobilize people into our communities that we're building, our entire villages. And but I think, like, whatever we do, like, when I look back, like, I hope that people will be in housing, that we will have been shown, you can see the difference that's been made, but even more so, like, there will be relationships that speak the difference has been made. It'll be where people that maybe had not ever imagined themselves walking alongside somebody that's come out of homelessness, walking alongside them, or spending time, gardening with them, or celebrating their birthday, or like there'll be this greater, more intertwined tapestry of relationship between those that have and those that did not. And I think, like, if I can help build that in any way, or that, I don't know, Alan Graham just talks about it as a tapestry and just all these different pieces threaded together, leaving this really beautiful thing. Like, that to me is, in 10 years, I hope that I can see that more fully formed.
Well, it made me think of, like, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the poor is what Luke says. It just was right for it. Like that really, if we can all recognize the humanity in one another, the dignity and the need that we have, right? That even the people who have financial means or have housing means or whatever the case, I mean, like, we have needs, right? We do have, and maybe that was part of your experience being in the hospital the way that you were. It's like, I'm poor.
Yeah.
I have nothing, right? I don't have this. And I don't know, that just probably stays with us. So I'm going to transition us to kind of our rapid fire questions. So just top of mind.
Oh, man.
I don't know, say. So,
I just thought it was an group and plan, control, stay out of my comfort zone right here.
It is so funny. There are external processes, internal processes. There's not a right or wrong answer. So what is your favorite place to eat in Tulsa?
My house. Honestly, my husband is such a good cook.
What's the best thing he makes?
He makes a buffalo chicken sandwich. I would pick that almost every day, except he says we can't eat it every week. Oh, he makes that. He makes chicken brine, which is a Los Cabos, but Carrabba's.
My wife loves chicken brine from Carrabba's. That's like her favorite.
His is even better than theirs.
Okay, well,
It's so good.
so go eat it.
So or yeah, he really is. He's a fantastic cook. He keeps us all healthy, and I have like a couple dishes to make, but he's really good. So
You like underdogs. So what is a small business, local small business that people don't know about that they should know about?
I'll give you two that are great supporters of us that we love dearly. Andolini's has always been a great supporter from the very beginning. And Imperial, which does vending.
Okay. Yep.
They cut our vegetables every week, and I love them, and they're right here, and we love them so much. They're not necessarily just right here because they are in other places too, but Imperial Vending Company or LLC here in Tulsa has been great to us.
Okay. Somebody's visiting from out of town. Where is the first place you take it?
The gathering place. I don't know. I mean, like we do all the stops. I like to show them all around. We'll take them Center Universe, take them downtown. Our downtown is so great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so great. There's so many great places to eat and go and do, and so, also we'll take them to the village and give them a tour whether they want it or not.
What is a nonprofit that most people don't know about? That you'd love to just kind of help people know more about?
I'm just gonna forget the name of it. Okay, I've got to go back to that one.
Yeah, okay, we'll go back to that one.
But there's so many good ones around here, and a lot of the ones that we work with are, working with people experiencing homelessness. I think what Evan is doing over, kind of on the east side around Admiral, that Be Heard movement.
Okay.
They're doing showers and stuff like that. I think that they're doing a great job over on that side of town where there's not a lot of stuff. So I'll mention them right now. And I am going to kick myself because I cannot think of the name of the one. But there is a woman here in Tulsa that works with girls coming out of foster or that are ending up on the streets at a young age, and she's doing incredible stuff with them, and I cannot think of the name of it right now, and I'm kicking myself because I just read her newsletter yesterday. But she's doing a lot of great work too.
Okay.
Well, China, Family Promise. I mean, like, you can't even pick. There's just so many people doing really great work here.
Yeah. Well, and again, it really, I mean, that's one reason why, like, for me doing this podcast is because I'm like, there's so much like great stuff going on, and that people don't know, they just don't know, and if they and I'm just fascinated because there's just people, you never know what's going to be a spark that's going to help people to be like, I could do that, or maybe I'm not alone in this. How do I do that? Okay, so let's see here. I'm trying to think if there's any other Tulsa related. Most famous person you've ran into?
Oh, goodness. I'm terrible at this. I can see somebody famous at the airport and not know they're famous. I don't even know who that would be. I really don't. We did at one time meet the guy. See, and I don't even think of his name right now. The guy from Parent Trap, the dad.
Okay. I can't think
from the old Parent Trap.
The old Parent Trap. I can't think.
And he has a band, and we got an award at Guthrie Green and got to meet him and take a picture with him.
Okay.
He'll know. Oh, yes, so.
But the parent. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what is your favorite word?
Probably hope.
Okay. What is your favorite sound?
Ugh. Probably my kids.
Okay.
When they're telling me I love you, but they're all teenagers right now, so kind of gonna be even more so when they say yes. Yeah. No, my daughter came down and cuddled up next to me yesterday and gave me a hug, and she said I love you, and that was pretty sweet. So
that's cool. What is the most unique thing in your house?
Okay, this is weird, and I do know what this is exactly right now. So I had one of our neighbors that when he moved into housing, and I'm pretty sure he probably pulled this out of a dumpster, he wanted to give me a gift, and he gave me, it's either a vase or an urn. I'm not really sure which.
Okay.
but it's like huge. It's really big and it's got this massive peacock on the side of it. And I love it so much. And it is very unique and very weird. And it was given to me by one of our neighbors.
Oh, that's awesome. So is it prominently in your house?
Yeah, it is. It's
Okay.
right in the living room. So
Okay. So if I went over there, we would notice like,
yes,
okay,
you're like, that is
that is that. What is something you are currently rethinking?
oh man. Rethinking. Um Currently with work, rethinking like are the ways that we help people um become more able to sustain better. So like really like how are we helping get them prepared for like food insecurity being in a house because if they don't work or they don't drive or whatever those type of things like how do we help them be more prepared to handle that and get the things that they need to be able to sustain better without us.
Okay. Okay. And you've been probably been thinking of that for a long time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. When was the last time you cried?
Oh gosh, like today. I cry all the time. No, I have actually like today, yeah, and then we have some family things that are going on. My nephew, they found a tumor on his arm. He's 12, and so he's actually flying to Baltimore today. So
Good.
getting that news this week has been a little bit rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. 12. Yeah. Yeah. This thing shouldn't happen when people are 12, right? Shouldn't happen later, but yeah. What's a book I need to read?
Oh man. Welcome Homeless by Alan Graham.
Okay.
Written written by the guy that started Community First Village in Austin, Texas. So still down there. He's an incredible man. It's a really great book. I think Strangers at My Door by Jonathan Wilson Hargrove. Did he write that one? I think he did. Great book. I love that one too. He started a house in North Carolina where people kind of just come and stay when they need to and talks about the stories of that. I also love if you're in leadership, managing to change the world. Love that book and use it all the time. And I mix it with Leaders Eat Last. I think those should be mashed together.
So managing to change the world. Who wrote that?
Can't remember who wrote that one. But it's a management book on like how to manage people. But I think like I read that one with Leaders Eat Last at the same time, and I need them to mash all together.
That sounds like a chat GPT.
Yeah.
Mash these two things together.
Yeah. I just think that they could really like balance out different pieces of each other. So those are both good ones.
Let me see. I've got a list of questions here. What do you hope people say about you?
Oh man. Oh, I know what I don't want them to. No. What do I want them to say about me? I think that I want them to know, I would want them to think that I loved people well. And that I always left room at the table for them. Or open the doors for them. I think a lot of times in female leadership, we work in a lot of a guy's world. And like I hope that I've had a lot of women that have held the door open for me and a lot of men that have welcomed me to the table too and allow me to have a voice. And I hope that as I grow up that I can do that for others and that I will be somebody that they think of that loved well and that invited other people in.
This is on my list, but it's based on what you said. So what, as a male leader, do I need to know about female leadership?
Females are great leaders. I've just always appreciated the men in my life that have stood by me in a way that allowed my voice to matter without them having to tell everybody at the table my voice mattered. Like position themselves in a way that before I even show up, that
Right.
people know that I'm important.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And she knows what she's talking
yeah.
about. And we should, yeah. Okay. That's good to know. That's helpful. So yeah, so I listen to a guy, Steve Cuss. I don't know if you've ever come across
Mm.
Steve Cuss. He has a podcast called Being Human.
Mm.
And so he wrote a book called Managing Leadership Anxiety. But in his Being Human podcast that he has what he calls the gauntlet, which is basically I just still all this. And so his last question, my last question too, is when was the last time you most felt fully loved?
Hmm. Well, I felt pretty fully loved right now because I am back to not doing anything because I just had shoulder surgery, as you know, and so people have had to take care of again because I can't move my arm. But yeah. So most fully loved. See, I am one of those people that have to think about things. So, I mean, I feel like I'm very cared for and very loved right now. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Regret that.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel so much gratitude for the people around me. And I don't think that they miss opportunities to tell me that they care about me. I mean, I came back from Thanksgiving with a note on my desk from one of my coworkers that, I mean, it just said, like, I just want you to know that I was thinking about you and I'm so grateful to work with you. I mean, and that is the culture of the people that are around me, and I feel really lucky to have that. So, and a lot of people don't. In Alan's book, Welcome Homeless, which I mentioned, there's a piece where he's talking about one of his friends that they gave like a standing ovation to. And that was the first time that friend had ever had that.
Mm.
And he said, people pat me on the back and tell me good job and how I'm awesome all the time.
Yeah.
And there are people that never get that.
Mm.
And so I've always really thought about that, especially as we've grown and people, they're very kind and say kind things all the time. But I'm just like, man, I'm not deserving of all of that. But let's give it to that person because they never get it,
Yeah.
I don't know. When we went into people's houses last week and delivering baskets, we had a lady there were a couple different people that we walked in and I said something about your house is adorable. It's so cute. And they would be like, it is? And then they were like, can I show you my bedroom? And I just think man, anytime we can put that on for somebody else that doesn't get it very much is great. So,
Yeah.
but I feel really grateful. I have a lot of good people around me.
Well, that's great. Yeah, well, I think it does have me thinking, yeah, because in my job, I'll preach on a Sunday, people tell me, good job, like that kind of stuff. And they can't imagine doing what I'm doing, so it's like, oh, wow, you talk in front of people. I can't imagine talking in front of people. So that's just so hard. And so they it's a skill that they just respect or maybe more maybe not respect is the right word, but it wows them because they can't imagine doing it. And then how they don't I'm like, golly, I think about nurses, I cannot, I mean, just I can't watch somebody give me a shot because I was just so I tell people I couldn't be a nurse or a doctor. I couldn't do, a lot of these things. But even the ordinary things could be extraordinary for people, right? Just having a cute house when they didn't grow up in a house, right? Or, that, and they put time and effort and work into notice that. What a gift that would be to people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Just to people to find things in others that you can compliment, and it really does make a difference. So, and people do that to me all the time, and it always feels very sweet and kind, and I feel really grateful to be able to be a part of that. Man, I wish I could remember that nonprofit. So
It's trying to give you some time.
I know. I cannot even I can see their logo in my head and everything, and I can't even think of it. So I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me and we'll that's about. Well, thank you so much for your time today and just for the difference that City Lights, and I'll be excited to kind of see where it goes, and I'm sure just City Lights Tulsa. How do people find you online? All that good stuff.
It's citylightsok.org. It's our website, and then we're on Facebook too, so you can find and Instagram and all the media places. I don't do that. People do it that are good at it. That's right. But yeah, so you can find us there. Come out and volunteer, sponsors. Yeah.
What time?
Volunteers get there at 6:15. They park in the big lit parking lot next to Iron Gate and then just walk down the path to the bridge. You'll see people in lights. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. Our Christmas Under the Bridge, which this will probably air after, is going to be on the 19th. So we're really excited about that. It'll be fun.
Christmas gifts, that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah. Santa is there, and there's kids' gifts, and then there's adult gifts, and Imperial's doing a big barbecue dinner for us. And
Sweet.
so it'll be a lot of fun.
And then people can, give, they can give online, they can give anytime, they can become monthly. I mean, I bet that would be nice to have some monthly.
Yeah, City Lights ambassadors are monthly donors, and so they give whatever month or whatever amount is good for them for the month. We have several people that give like $5-10 a month that were guests of ours under the bridge, and now I've kind of got on their feet and wanted to give back. So they are ambassadors, and then we have others that give $250 a month, whatever works for a person, and that helps us be able to do all of the things we do day in and day out.
Yeah.
All of our other programs.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
What a great conversation we had with Sarah. And I really want your help to get the word out about this podcast. So if you would do a few things for us, if you would subscribe to the podcast on however you subscribe, if you would rate the podcast, if you'd give us 5 stars, put in a few words, that would really help us to get the message out. Because we're continuing to tell great stories of people in Tulsa. And I want next week, we're going to hear from a guy named Kevin Rice. Now, he is a developer. One of the things that Tulsa needs is affordable housing. And he's going to tell about Harvard Terrace and what his family has done over the decades, including how they have not raised the rent on people, that the price they come in on is the price they stay with. It's an extraordinary model of helping out people in our community and just being a benevolent yet business-minded landlord and community developer. So you're going to enjoy our conversation with Kevin Rice next week on the Tulsa Neighbor Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.